My father's name was Miroslav Feric. He was a very adventurous young boy. He was mad keen on flying. There were a lot of spare planes around at the end of the First World War, and particularly in Poland. So there was a lot of flying going on, and he spent every hour he could up at the local aero club. The Poles were trained to fly in tight formation. In fact, they attached cords between the wingtip of one aeroplane and the wingtip of another. And they were made to take off and fly and land like that. Another piece of training they used was to fly head-on at each other. And they used it to scare people. If you've got another plane flying straight at you, it's quite unnerving. And so, and they were told you must not brake until the last possible minute. And some of them got quite hairy. They were roundly shouted at if they broke too early. The Poles had already fought a short war in Poland. They'd actually lasted and held out longer than the French did. And which a lot of people don't realise. But they had seen this absolutely vicious blitzkrieg overtake their country. They'd had to leave their families. A lot of them had been killed, murdered almost. Their homes had been razed to the ground, and they lost their country. They've got a lot to fight for. The first air operations was a real success. A flight went up. That was the flight my father was in. And the Poles were such good flyers, everyone got a German. Apart from that, I suppose, was his contribution on Battle of Britain Day, when he managed to put 2 Messerschmitts out of action. To get 2 was good. What do they do when they're off duty? I think most of the time was spent in the Orchard, which was a very popular pub in Ruislip. If you happen to have a friendly squadron commander who had a large open Rolls-Royce, he might even run you down to the pub in it. You get 12 people in that car. Not only were they taught to fly incredibly well, they were taught that officers were also gentlemen, and there was a code. This bowing and clicking and kissing of hands, and that whenever you called upon a lady, you took flowers. And you kissed hands before, as you arrived, and you kissed hands when you left. And it was drilled into them that that's how you behaved properly. Didn't always go that way, but in the pub, well, there were a lot of young women around who saw these rather dashing foreign people and heard the stories about them. And they did become the glamour boys of England, according to the daily papers. And they were incredibly popular. Not so perhaps with the RAF officers who were in the pub. And there were a lot of jibes and comments about the Poles, and it did get a bit heated at times. But the women, oh yes, they loved the Poles. But then my mother was one of them. This is an extract from a letter by Air Vice Marshal Stanley Vincent, who was the Northolt Station Commander at the time of the Battle of Britain, who couldn't believe in the early days what the Poles were doing and what they were claiming for victories. We had a wonderful 100th Hun party in a dispersal pen with officers and airmen of the squadron surrounding a long line of tables with bottles of whiskey, gin, sherry, port, beer, etc., arranged down the middle. The hosts of the squadron, i.e. the pilots, mixed cocktails for the few of us who were guests, which consisted of a tot out of every bottle in a tumbler. After 1 or 2 cocktails and some really good singing by officers and airmen, I had the honour of being tossed in a blanket, but without the blanket. We were all very good friends.